Alright, now that I've done my digging, I've isolated the two types of clay that I found on my property in my build location. So there's essentially this sort of darker, sort of reddish clay here, and this sort of yellow clay you'll see here on the right. Now what I'm trying to do here is figure out what the shrink swell capacity is of each type of clay. Now, what I've done is I've taken two large blocks of each and I've broken them up into tiny little pieces so that they could dry out faster. And the idea behind this is to take each, once they're completely dry, and put them in these glasses. One glass will contain just dry clay, and the other two will initially have dry clay, but I will add water to. So the third glass, which just has dry clay, will be my basis for comparison. So I won't add water to it, and I'll add a certain level. So I'll add maybe a centimeter or maybe an inch of clay in each glass. The one that does not have any water, I'll use to compare to the other two after adding water. If the swelling occurs, then the two glasses which contain the water should have risen in level, or may even break the glasses. I mean, I guess I'll have to wait and see. But just my initial observation is that this yellow clay seems to dry out very, very quickly, and it's able to break up into these tiny pieces very rapidly. You can kind of see the difference in the clay here. This is already broken into lots of tiny pieces, and I wasn't really able to do that with this. I was only able to break it into little nuggets because it's so wet. It all sticks together. It doesn't want to break apart. So that leads me to believe that this yellow clay is much less expansive than this reddish clay, which is very, very good because the point at which I stopped digging on my property is essentially the point at which this yellow clay begins. And so that's a really good sign, indicating that that I've removed the expansive clay from beneath where my property will ultimately reside. So I'm going to keep drying this out, and then I'll post a new video once I have the results. All right, so I did the test of the two different types of clay. Now I'm actually back in my trench here, and I'm trying to get an idea on how level my digging was. So what I've done is I have these three posts that I got. I pound them into the ground at different locations. It's very hard to get a gauge of how level the ground is. I put the level up to the string to get an idea on how level we are. So if you see, I take the level and I rest it right on the string. It's actually right about perfect, which is really surprising to me. That was not what I was expecting at all. I'm gonna lay a rock layer on top of this clay layer, and the reason for that is I want to do a rubble trench foundation, which is essentially you just take a bunch of big rocks and you lay it down in a ditch like I've dug here, and then even it out with a rake or whatever. And then if the soil expands and contracts, which it looks like I have like a 30% expansive contraction for both clays. I was thinking that maybe the bottom layer, the yellow clay, because it was drying out so fast, would be less expansive, have less shrink swell capabilities. But as it turns out, I think just because it was lower in the ground, it started out drier to begin with. And it looks like they still have the same sort of shrink swell capacity of about 30%. So when it's dry, it's like 1 inch. When it's wet, it's 1.3 inches. So I can expect there to be some expansive clays when it rains. So that's one of the reasons why the rubble trench foundation is so important, to make sure that there's proper drainage. Now, it looked like the yellow clay absorbed water slower but retain the same amount of water as the red clay. So because of that, I can expect that if I have decent drainage, that the clays will not be, or the yellow clay will not be so absorbent, which is essentially where I've dug down to. Now there will be some red clay as well, because obviously it's not going to be perfect. I can't get rid of all of it, but things are looking pretty good so far. Okay, so we just had a very heavy rain, right? So this gives me some idea on where things still need to be evened out. Luckily, the dirt isn't really going back into the hole, which is really a blessing. I was kind of worried that if it rained really hard, all these mounds would just go collapsing back into the hole and I'd have to dig them out again, but doesn't appear to be the case, so that's good. Looks like the water is, for the most part, draining into this pit down here. It's fairly slow, I think mainly because of some of the areas that are a little too high with dirt, like this main area here. I'll see you guys in the next video.